welcome, and thank you for being here. And this is our closing plenary session. The purpose of the closing plenary is to provide feedback to the Secretary and to the Secretary's board, the Iaju board. Today, and perhaps in the coming weeks for some, each of the 6 regional associations will select 2 people to be members of the board. Their task will be to develop the strategic plan for the next 3 years until we meet again. So their plan will be made up of our suggestions and the suggestions that come from the 6 regions. We don't vote on resolutions. That would be a difficult thing to accomplish in a very short time. So we don't vote on resolutions, but we are looking for suggestions to come from each of the regions for where IAJU ought to go. I think you could see that while the association was created just 3 years ago in Bilbao at the Justo, in a very short time, despite 2 full years of COVID, quite a bit can be accomplished when people take these recommendations seriously and we get working together on joint projects. So I think I hope over the last 2 days, you have seen the accomplishments of quite a number of people. I think there's been over 100 people involved in the background or the presentation to this group. So we'll go down the row here. I'll ask Father Luis Arriaga from Aushal to start, and then I'll give each of them 10 to 12 minutes to talk about their report and what they're recommending, and then we'll open this to the floor. You could signal your own concerns that were left out. You can underline one of the concerns that comes up, offer some new ideas. So let's get going. We have until 4 unless we finish earlier.
Thank you very much, Michael. I highly appreciate all the efforts that you have done for us, for all the networks, and for our universities. Greetings to all here present. I'm so grateful to be here in this assembly. Today I will share with you our conclusions during our Aushal meeting this morning. We're very happy to have Father General in this dialogue with us. As you can imagine, I'm doing an extensive synthesis effort considering that our Latin America discussion as a big family are significant and with a lot of possibilities. Through the process, we have identified 5 challenges that are at the same time proposals for this assembly and for Iaju as well. The first one will be to face the tension between the interest in deepening our ties with the Latin America region while we intensify our cooperation with other regions. So we have to deal with that. And the proposed response to this challenge is that in the next Iaju Assembly, we establish an exchange with all the continental work networks and learn about their main projects and goals and what they're doing. And this, we think that will serve us to make interconnections between our common goals and projects and all that. That's the first proposal that we would like to share with you. The second one will be to acknowledge how Jesuit universities promote democracy and accountability based on the democratic observatory promoted by Aushal. I mean, we're very open and we'll be very happy to share all our conclusions or our research and methodologies. The proposal here is that we begin conversation to encourage all Iaju networks to join the observatory and adopt its methodology to follow up democracy threats with solutions. As Father General has said, the threat towards democracy is a threat to our university, so it's a global problem and we need to face it. Also, we talk about sustainability, climate change and other issues, but I think this one we already have a proposal. So the defense of democracy must be a priority goal for all the Iaju. The third is to oversee how we support our sister universities that are going through complicated and social economic situation, which make their survival as Jesuit entities almost impossible to overcome, and we know the cases. The proposals relies on finding ways to a structure mechanism to collaborate with these universities in order to support them in different ways. We have done this with UCA or Católica in Venezuela, for example, opening courses in our universities. I think we have more than 500 courses, right, Francisco? The fourth challenge for us will be to discern how we strengthen Iaju to increase all its possibilities. And for this, we must see as a priority the creation of an office for communications. We were discussing that in our group. So someone who can be, very easy to contact. So we are, I think that's a form to be able to operate everything we have discussed during this assembly, and finally, to keep in mind how to integrate our students into this project. I think that's very important. We have spoken about, for example, the Magis exchange program, but also we were sharing our experience as AUSJAL, La Beca AUSJAL, the scholarship that we have a lot of experience in this kind of things. Because for us, Iaju and the experience of Iaju is that it's a very important institution to really promote global citizenship. Through here, we learn to live together in an intercultural and intergenerational way. The members of AUSJAL believe that this assembly has been enriching and contrasting. We have brand new Jesuit universities on the one hand and very experienced ones on the other hand. Universities with huge endowments and others suffering from lack of resources. So we have to deal with this kind of diversity. Universities dealing with overwhelming issues like migration and climate change, and universities dealing with diversity and gender issues. So they have multiple agendas. Therefore, we are called to care for our students, our faculty, and our administrative body according to our local context. And we are here because we believe that education is the way to transform people's minds and hearts. So thank you again for everything.
Thank you. Thank you. You may have some questions, so hold those a bit. I want to ask, tell us more about this observatory, for example. What is it, and how do we join up? But let's keep moving and save your questions.
Yes, I'm Philipp Geister from the Kirche Network, and I try to report about the discussion that we had in our regional assembly, which was in many ways a little bit overlapping, which I think is a good thing. We started with an open session to gather issues that should be part of the next strategic plan, and the first thing that came up was, also as you already mentioned, Luis, a bigger integration of students. It was a positive experience to have many students here at the assembly. It was beautiful to look at the videos from the Master's Exchange Program and the Global Citizenship Program, to hear more about it, and we think that more of these kind of activities should be developed. We felt also, if we look back at the past 3 years, that this was a period of time where IAJU found its own identity, and that the next step would be now to look outwards again and to look at networks that we could cooperate with outside of society, social apostolates that we could work with, generally seek for partners. It would be a task to look at during the upcoming 3 years. We also had the topic up of how do we react when we find out that there are universities belonging to our networks who are in trouble. Do we can establish a kind of hotline where universities can call if there is any form of support needed in academic issues, in other areas, but also when there's just a political situation or whatsoever where the solidarity of the other institution is needed. We should also use the time to get a better understanding of the stakeholders and their needs. For example, the Congregation of Catholic Education, students, companies, and also to do some more policy work to challenge or to better understand the system of ranking and rating of universities, because they often direct us in an understanding of what is good and what is excellent that we probably from our Jesuit values don't completely support. So can we do some work in order to influence how this ranking works and how the rating of universities work in order to match better to the values that we are supporting? So these were kind of new ideas that we came up with. Then we had a long discussion about the document from the task force of the role of theology at universities. That was quite natural because in the European and Near East region, we have so many schools and faculties of theology, so this was really a topic that engaged us and engages us. And with the starting point of the document that was presented, we felt that this is good to continue with this work. It's very important, and we would, from our region, also want to be more committed and more engaged in this work than we have been in the previous phase. But the common denominator of the discussion that we had in our group was that we need to broaden the topic. It was a little bit too focused, perhaps also on the North American situation, about how theology is taught at a university. We should look broad in how we do, so to say, theology in the larger context of society. The European context, of course, quite different from the American context, but again, the topic is kind of broadening. We should look at the relationship of philosophy and theology more closely. We should, in general, have a more interdisciplinary understanding of theology, how theology relates to other academic fields and fields of interest in society. And also talk about the role of theologians in Jesuit universities and in universities which are not Jesuit, the role, the position of the theologian as a person also. Even an integration between theology and spirituality was desired, that we don't separate it, as if spirituality would be the part of the heart of theology and theology would be the kind of the cold science. They should be kept together. The participation of students of theology is something we missed in the document that we discussed here, and should be taken into account in a new document. And let's see, yeah, and also if we have a commission that works with questions, it would be good not only to have theologians in it, that you don't have kind of 15 theologians to discuss theological topics, but also students and people from other fields to have a kind of a broader look and a more distanced look also at the challenges and the tasks of theology. I think this is from everything from the European side.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, first of all, the Africa region would like to thank Father General, thank the board of Iaju, Boston College, and all the participants for the success of this General Assembly. We were truly blessed to be here and to learn from all of you. Second, we want to thank also those who were able to come express their interests in collaborating with the Jesuit universities in Africa. I know a lot of you, or many of you wanted to come, but there is no bilocation for now. So we are still interested in getting in touch with you so that we can continue the conversation. As you all know, Jesuit universities in Africa are very young, and in that regard, we take it as an opportunity. And as Father Mike was mentioning at the beginning, we want to build on the momentum of Deusto because our network did not exist before. We want to build on this momentum to focus on one particular area, which is our priority: collaboration. And what we mean by collaboration has two aspects. The first aspect is inter-university collaboration between our universities in Africa. We have already started the discussion, but we're going to fine-tune it and to refine it over time. Issues that are already emerging are governance, peace, environmental justice, the mining sector, and so on. So we want to find areas of collaboration first among our universities in Africa. The second aspect of collaboration is what we termed strategic and systemic collaboration. What we mean is that we would welcome collaboration that involves many universities in Africa, because we want to learn from the successes and from the failures, from all the experiences of those universities in the Jesuit network that are older than us. But we want to do it as a community so that we can also learn from each other within the continent. So our very first and number one priority is collaboration, intra-Africa and of course between our universities and other universities. A recommendation, that we have is that we would encourage the board to make sure that the universities from AJCU AM are deliberately and intentionally included in the task forces. Because sometimes we realize that there are issues of great interest to us, and unfortunately for some reason we are not part of the discussion. So we hope that over time we're going to make sure that all our universities are part of the debate, because we are learning a lot from, I would say, from the discussion that's going on in these task forces. So these are the 2 points that we have discussed mostly. First, collaboration. Second, participation in the task forces. Thank you very much.
Good evening, friends. I represent Jesuit Higher Education Association of South Asia, 63 higher education institutions out of 3,918 Jesuits in South Asia, we are 264 working in higher education institutions. We were supposed to 61 to participate, but we couldn't get the visa, so we are 37. This morning we had deliberations. We want to thank on behalf of JHASA institutions, Iaju board, Father Michael, Father Christie, and very specially Father William, the president of Boston College, for their warm welcome and their hospitality. So in the morning deliberations, before Father General came to us, and after that also we had deliberations. What we did was to choose priority areas for JHASA, for our association, and also action plans. And also want to suggest some priority areas for IAJU, for their consideration, for the delegates' consideration. I'll start with the priority areas for JHASA. We want you to know what are the areas we want to work. Also, we want you to know where are the areas that we will work. We have 5 areas. 1, fundamentalism and issues of democracy. I think South Asia is facing a grave crisis. We have a central government that is anti-minority, anti-poor, having corporate agenda to push their own extreme fundamentalism, and aggressively they promote anti-poor, anti-minority programs, particularly national education policies, biggest threat to most of our institutions. Concretely, so many of our institutions will be closed if this is implemented completely. So we will work on this to evolve strategies to counter this extreme fundamentalism and Hindutva forces. Number 2, peace and reconciliation is our focus area, how to make our higher education institutions as places of reconciliation in our programs, more evolving intercultural programs, activities that will promote constitutional values. Indian constitution is very secular, multi-ethnic, multicultural. So therefore we will promote those ideas. 3rd, focus area, formation of youth, especially migrants and refugees. How to reach out to migrants and refugees in terms of courses, programs in our institutions. Particularly we will work with JWEL, Father Peter Bala, opening up. We have only 3 institutions to work, and we'll open up further institutions to work with him to reach the migrants and refugees. Father General told us we must run our institutions for not the rich, poor. 4, evolve a South Asian spirituality that guides and directs all our activities, mission of education, higher education. 5, ecology and justice. We want to develop, along with the team task force, develop Laudato Si University action plan, and we will commit and enroll. So we will also work on action plans for us. We will increase our participation in Margis exchange program, and we'll also involve ourselves global citizenship program soon. And 3rd, collaboration networking within our JHASA institutions in terms of sharing resources and sharing our best practices. 4, we will work on programs for capacity building for our faculty, staff and students. And we will form task forces for the priority areas we have just suggested. Lastly, we want to suggest to IAJU very specially 4 focus areas. We want the IAJU to choose collaboration networking as a priority area for faculty exchange, collaborative research, and knowledge sharing, particularly sharing the learning resources, open journals and learning other resources. And particularly we want to, in our deliberation we said, when we network with IAJ institutions, we see that it will really have an impact on the the government, central government, which is anti-poor, anti-minority, just said, so that they will really give up this whole anti-minority, anti-poor strategies. That's the best way to link with the international universities, IAG institutions, so that will put pressure on the government to give up this anti-democratic project. Third, we want IAGU to continue to focus on peace and reconciliation. That relates directly to our efforts to evolve counter discourses against this anti-minority one, and we want to also use this Ignatian spirituality in the process of reconciliation. Fourth focus area, priority area we want to suggest to IAGU is ecological and economic justice, joining the 7-year journey towards. We want to strengthen this and expand this Laudato Si University working group where we want to participate. As Francois said, in our group also, there was a concern that we need to participate. We are about 63 institutions, so many of us working, and IAGU task forces, we would like to participate actively involving in the programs and the process. Once again, my sincere thanks on behalf of JASA to everyone who has made this assembly fruitful and productive. Thank you very much.
I begin with a word of gratitude to Father Leahy and everyone here at Boston College who prepared our food and checked us into our rooms and did all those works of corporal mercy to bring us together. The United States, Canada, Belize, and Haiti group, I hope I'm not leaving out another country. We had an amazing session this morning. We began with sharing about our consolations experienced these days. And the biggest consolation again and again and again was being together with all our sister institutions from around the world. And the deep family resemblance that there is. How each one of our schools is rooted in the place where it's planted and also so connected with each other. That brought us much consolation. The challenges that human persons and human communities are facing around the globe brought us much desolation, but also perhaps pushed us toward hope and towards a desire to be freed by God to carry out God's will more and more effectively through our apostolate, through our common apostolate. There was consolation that this group over time, since Bilbao until now, has grown more cohesive, has grown more practical, has grown more together, and that gives us hope for the next 3 years. Particularly, there were some things that we didn't hear so much and that we want to hear more about. One, of course, is racism, to the treatment of indigenous peoples. And there we found great consolation in Pope Francis's pilgrimage through Canada recently, dealing with the boarding schools, and how perhaps Francis allowed the church to experience being humble, perhaps the church experienced being humiliated in order to be reconciled and to be freed. Another thing that perhaps we didn't hear so much about is the new technologies and social media, which are a two-edged sword. They give us great new tools for pedagogy, great new tools for us to share learning resources throughout our entire worldwide network of schools. But also there's a perniciousness about social media which is causing mental health challenges to our youth and isolating them from each other and stunting our humanity. And that's something that we, I think, especially as Jesuit educators, need to confront because it is truly a great crisis. We underscored the depth and breadth of our 450-year plus tradition of pedagogy and curriculum in the humanities and how this is truly a liberating education. And we have to double down on that to say, how might we continue to educate our students into freedom, into agency, into resilience, into health and thriving, and most especially into hope. We talked about how we need to redouble our efforts with university ministries and with chaplaincies, tying them more closely with university life and aligned with curriculum and pedagogy for the formation of youth in that humanistic Jesuit Ignatian tradition. Towards the end, there were 5 areas that we hope we could see more collaboration and more cooperation throughout the entire Jesuit family, the 6 regions. One, of course, is migration. It is more and more dire, and so it's more and more front of attention, and it cries for our full engagement, not just in relief or in reception, but also in study and then in advocacy. And we heard how most of the forcibly displaced people are just moving around in their regions. They're not necessarily coming to the north. A second area of cooperation that we hope to see more of is a global formation of Ignatian leaders. We can learn leadership from each other on a global scale that is far richer and far more effective than we can ever learn by just staying home. Number 3, possibilities for more international research projects along the lines of the Kirche invitation on such particularly important and uniquely Catholic projects such as Fratelli Tutti. What is happening around the church, around the world with Fratelli Tutti and that teaching? And of course, Laudato Si. Laudato Si. What is the depth of the teaching and how is it being effective? That's a great area of study that we could do on a very collaborative basis around the world. Anti-racism. Anti-racism. Education for anti-racism. Already in the 1950s, the US bishops published clear teaching on how the church needs to be anti-racist. And in the 60s, Father Arupe taught us clearly and laid out the pathway for us. We need to redouble, triple, quadruple our commitment in a holistic way. And finally, to study, looking forward, the construction of gender in all the many different human cultures around the world and have encounters so that we can more deeply understand, appreciate, and enrich each other with deeper and deeper understandings of the construction of gender. So I'll end with this, and it was a beautiful, beautiful intervention by John Sebastian, who said, maybe in the 1970s, the Jesuits reached our highest population level of Jesuits in the world. And was that our apex? Was that the summit? Or rather, perhaps today is the highest level of this Jesuit project. And we don't know how much higher it can go if we all go together. Thank you.
Good afternoon. First, I'd like to express the thanks of the Association of Jesuit Colleges and Universities of Asia Pacific to Father Leahy and for Boston College for the hospitality we received the past few days. We also had a very good morning. We began with a meeting with Father General, albeit short, but it has always been inspiring to have Father General first listen. He's a very good listener, and he listened to some of the concerns we raised in the limited amount of time, and to listen to his responses too, also very short towards the end. Then we proceeded to have our meeting about the strategic priority areas for IAJU for the next 3 years. Just a word first on our region. We are a very diverse region in terms of Jesuit institutions. We have institutions which are over 150 years old, and we have an institution which is 5 years old. We have universities with multi-colleges and multi-schools, and then we have a small residence hall, actually, that tries to operate and provide housing and formation for indigenous peoples in the northern Thailand area. We have a center in Beijing which tries to facilitate exchange and research on certain issues. Small and the large are present in our region. And as you know, we are very multicultural and a very multi-faith set of countries in the Asia-Pacific. These are our recommendations for the strategic priority areas for IAJU. First, we recommend that we continue the work of the 4 task forces working since the Bilbao Assembly: global citizenship, solidarity with migrants and refugees, peace and reconciliation, environmental and economic justice, especially promoting the journey to become Laudato Si universities. In the spirit of Magis, we thought that we should also add more recommendations. So this one we spent a really long time discussing. We recommend that we create a new task force on Ignatian spirituality, which is one of the proposals, but we tried to say that this should be given emphasis on contextualizing and inculturating the spiritual exercises in the different contexts which is given. For example, in Asian soil, which is very multicultural and multi-faith. If we can find ways to adapt the spiritual exercises for non-Christians, for non-believers, which are a majority in our region. And we hope also that this task force will develop practical tools for adapting the spiritual exercises by developing modules, manuals, conducting workshops for training the trainers. The third recommendation we have is we propose that a task force on interfaith dialogue be created, especially for Jesuit universities serving in multi-faith, multicultural communities and contexts. And this task force could develop principles of engagement, share best practices. Number 4, we recommend the creation of a new task force on synodality, developing the theory and practice of synodality in university governance, forming Jesuit and lay university leaders in the practice of synodality, forming Jesuit and lay leaders in the practice of discerning leadership. Fifth, we support the idea presented, the proposal that we create strategic alliances in specific disciplines: philosophy, teacher training, business, political science, between 3 or 4 universities in a specific region, but we propose that these alliances cover the areas of teaching, research, formation, and service. We continue to support the method that we have been using since Bilbao, that we develop these task forces, really engage the resources within the Jesuit network, within the network of IAJU, rather than contracting external consultants for these task forces. Finally, we were all inspired by the participation of our students during this 2022 assembly, the very first panel that sat in this table. So therefore, we recommend that all these task forces really find ways to engage our students in the work of the task forces and allow the voices of our students to be heard. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, we've heard from each of the regions, and now we want to open this up for your questions and comments. And then before we go, I want to make an announcement about tickets for the bus if you need to go to the airport tomorrow, Sunday. And we want to show you what you look like over the last couple days. We put together a kind of collage of photos from the assembly, which we won't be able to show tonight at the banquet because we won't have a projector there. So you'll have to look at yourself now. But let's open this up. I want to thank all of you really for wonderful reports, very clear. I want to ask you all, I notice you're almost all reading from a text. I want the text, or I want the text to be sent to me so we can compile this for Joseph and the new board that will be created. So Joseph, this is all for you. We'll turn this all over to you later. But let's open the floor. So anyone that wants to ask questions, comments, thoughts, it's a lot here that was put out by the regional groups. You want to add to this? I want to ask before you have to leave, tell us a little bit more about the observatory. Yeah, what is the observatory on democracy?
Thank you. Yeah, the observatory, it's a proposal that was based on a research project that we did in Aushal. I think there were more than 30 researchers from different universities that wrote a book about the crisis of democracy in Latin America. We have presented that observatory and the results of that research here, the first day that we got here. And then afterwards, we had a conversation in the different regions. So they share that democracy in all the continents was a topic that we could work together. That's why we were very interested in sharing this observatory and the conclusions of this model that could be helpful for other regions. Of course, I understand there are many differences between our countries and our continents, but maybe it can be useful if we can do as Iaju, a global project about democracy, since we have presence in all the continents. So that's the project, and that was our proposal as Aushal.
And from what I understand from Susanna here, what I understand is that we'd like to go back to Porticus, some foundation that would be interested in supporting this. The way much of this has been done has been through applying to foundations and others and groups and institutions like universities for direct support for projects that they are interested in as well. So we can raise money to do these things because we're not the only ones concerned about these very issues. So we're talking about a second grant, looking for a next grant for the next phase of this. So thank you.
And I think it's important to say that Father General is very concerned about democracy in the world. So I think he has been he has encouraged us to work on that specific topic, among other topics that we just had.
Thank you. Thank you. Questions, comments, thoughts, reflections?
At this point of the observatory, there are five issues that are dealing in this project. Okay, you are dealing with them. What are the five? Sorry, Elias Lopez. In this project, the observatory, you are dealing with 5 different points, okay? Could you name them, or the 5 sub-projects or topics that you are dealing with there?
Yeah. There are different topics. You can get a brochure. It's in the front desk. You can get a synthesis of the project with the goals and the results, and also the budget. So feel free to take one. I don't have it right now in my mind, the 5 topics, but there are 5 that you can obtain through the Aushal members. Can you bring those brochures for us, please, Alberto? Thank you.
Excellent. Comments, questions? You must have some. Yeah. Yes, go ahead, Peter.
Peter Jones from Loyola University in Chicago. I was very happy to hear the recommendation to emphasize and develop a task force on synodality. Obviously, the window of time for the Synod on Synodality that culminates in October 2023 is closing, but the spirit of that, of course, is that the weight of proceeding in a synodal fashion be embedded in Jesuit institutions, including institutions of education. But as a new administrator, after teaching for a long time, it's clear to me that you cannot easily institutionalize a synodal process because it requires what Father Sosa mentioned in his speech, letting go of the reins and allowing the fruits of the dialogue and the relationship that occur in an authentic synodal encounter to drive the project forward. There are projects underway that I've been learning about as I'm here, and that's why a couple of us from our university didn't ask permission. We simply registered and showed up to be here because we wanted to do some networking to see what relationships we could cultivate, and that's going very well. So a part of the message for senior leadership is when people working in your institutions, for lack of a better phrase, in a kind of guerrilla fashion, work together and get things done and then ask forgiveness later from you if necessary, support them, protect them, let them do that work because that is where you're going to find so much life. The project that we developed, which brought Pope Francis together with a group of university students in a Zoom meeting, is now being recreated in Africa, and I've got people here interested in doing the same thing in India, and now I have Asia on the radar. So there's more of that happening. But Pope Francis said yes before we ever brought this to our administrators because we were nervous about the controlling hand of that. So I just want to acknowledge and call to mind the need for emphasizing synodality, but also to make sure that we leave open the institutional space for the real novelty of the Spirit to be present. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Anyone else's concern? Is that welcome, Carlos? Yeah.
Hi. This is very loud. Ana Karen Barragan. Now I'll change my hat, and I'm a doctoral student in the University of San Francisco. And I just want to see if there is also possibilities for us as grad students in other countries rather than Aushal, that we can also collaborate in that democracy sector because we are already doing research between Jesuit mission and identity and the danger that they are living, that our universities in Latin America are facing. So to use us, grad students, as channels to do research from the outside that sometimes, because of the dangerous situations our Latin American universities are facing, they might not be able to reach. So I will ask you to see us as partners in this mission as well. And for everyone in the panel, I also would like to see a common project on mission and identity that can really gather us together and from the perspective of students, faculty members, and also staff. I think some of us are worried that for the tensions that the universities are living budget, sometimes the mission can get really not put it at the center. So I will ask that for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Carlos?
Thank you. What I would like to stress is the need to retain and to keep in our strategic planning this proposal on Jesuit university governance. As the proposal state, there is a need for a task force on Jesuit governance, considering that the alignment between universities and the priorities of the Society of Jesus requires a governance that are really involved in all this. So I would say that if we could keep this proposal, it would be great. It's the last one of the booklet.
On page 68.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm Xavier Jairaj, Secretary for Social Justice and Ecology at the Curia. Just 2 points. I think the concern for democracy, which Luis Arriaga mentioned, the social apostolate to the social centers have also been seriously considering. And so I would say that whether we could jointly do this project along with the social centers which are feeling the crunch of the work in many of our social centers, be it in Latin America or Asia or in other places. Secondly, also collaboration along with the Secretariat and the conferences on ecology. Social Justice and Ecology Secretariat, we have been having this Eco-Jesuit, and so that collaboration can be together along with the higher education, and which has been the concern of Father General as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Xavier. John?
Hi, John Dardis from the Jesuit Curia in Rome, working on apostolic planning globally. Yeah, just to follow up the democracy issue that so many people have raised, it's something that has really brought a lot of consolation to me during this meeting. As I mentioned, the night of the film presentations, when you look at the last century and the destruction caused by all the isms, the ideologies, Nazism, Stalinism, and so many other ideologies, we have to say that our universities, by exposing ideologies and by giving students the courage to combat them, and especially by studying democracy, we can make an important contribution, very important contribution. Secondly, just as a point of information, the General has asked me to set up a global Ignatian young adult network. And I would say that your students and your institutions can be key. And this year we'll be setting up the network, doing a mapping, but then we look for projects. A network needs to have something to do. And one of the things we're considering is precisely the issue of democracy, and especially the issue of helping young politicians see you can be a politician and a man or woman of faith, but you don't need to be fundamentalistic and you don't need to be secularistic. How to manage that tension, how to live that tension, that's something uniquely Ignatian and Jesuit. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I'm so happy that Ausal proposed that workshop. We could have spent 2-3 days just on the topic, yeah. Anything else? Any other thoughts, suggestions? I hope the format of these 3 days has been pleasurable, enjoyable. We didn't have experts coming from the outside to tell us what to do. We shared a lot about the work that we are already doing together to show that collaborations are already in place and already happening, and that we have experts among us. So it wasn't focused, as many meetings are, with speeches. It's been a sharing of topics. Of course, almost everyone, we could have talked a lot longer, could have spent a lot more time engaging the audience, but how do you get all of this in? The more projects Iaju, Yahoo, as the Spaniards say, the more Yahoo does, the more we have to report back to you, and we fill up the time in just a couple of days. So one of the suggestions that came out of the North American meeting was that perhaps we could make optional a day of prayer before this begins, before we begin, so that those who are traveling from afar could take some time to quiet themselves, reflect, and get in the mood for, if you will, for being attentive to the panels, whatever it is that the General is saying, etc. So that's another idea that is very welcome. Those kinds of ideas are very welcome, and I'm sure Joseph Christie will take all of these things now and will do his best to prepare us for the next one. We don't know where the next meeting will be yet. I hope we can go to a place where visas are easier to get and where people can travel more easily, so that those of our colleagues that had trouble getting to here. We had trouble getting to Melbourne. We're going to have trouble no matter where we go for some, but there are some easier places to be, and hopefully have, with the facilities we need. This was close to 400. There are almost 200 people here still, so it's close to 400 people when we started, and that's a lot to handle for any institution. But again, to Bill Leahy, for your work, for your generosity, for your hospitality, we are extremely grateful. I mentioned this before, those of you who want a ride to the airport, there are tickets for buses on Sunday that can take you to the airport. They leave every half hour. You need to sign up so that we know who we're taking, so you can purchase those tickets, and that's an easy way then to get to the airport. Anyway, they're available right outside the hall here, so, and can be sold at the desk. And
thank you so much.
You have to go.
I have to go, but I just want to say that we are open to dialogue, and we are open to share our experience and to work. We really look forward to work together with the social justice centers or with other universities. So please count on us. Thank you very much, all.
Can I hear for all of these, for our panelists? And now, if I could ask our folks in the projection booth, I think you've got something prepared for us. Are we ready? Thank you.
Ooh.
Is Mickleway here? Is he here? Is Mickleway here? There he is. That's the guy that did it. Terrific. Thank you very much. Thank you. It was excellent. So we have Mass with Father General at 5 o'clock, and that's at the Mark O'Connell Recreation Center. And just after that, we have the closing banquet. And at the closing banquet, we will, for the first time, be presenting 6 medals, St. Peter Canisius medals for extraordinary service to Jesuit higher education, 1 from each region. So come find out who they are. Thank you.